is what we like last week we were talking about starting a course about narcissists and narcissism.
Yes.
So it is on topic.
Exactly. And that's what I thought. I'm like, you know what? I think this will be a perfect topic, talking about the difficulty of dealing with intense personalities, because that's what to me it is. It's a very intense and powerful and draining personality, like you call the energy vampire, right? That's how a lot of narcissists, or I mean every narcissist that I've met, drains the energy. So I mean maybe the vampire might be an understatement in some instances, depending on how they are on the scale of narcissism, right? Because I believe all of us, every human being has narcissistic qualities, even if we are past. Yes. And those that have been raised by a narcissist, I have a I have a couple of friends who have been raised by a narcissistic mother. One of them was intense narcissist, to a point where every day she told her, I wish I never had you. You ruined my life. You ruined my body. You're the worst thing that ever happened to me. And sometimes would say, I wish you weren't to be here. And I mean, no child wants to hear that. So of course, now she is in her 40s and just started learning about what narcissist is, and she realized that was her mother, and she knows that she has these qualities, these narcissistic qualities in her. And I have been very patient in allowing that energy in my life. You know what I mean? And I limit it to one person because very, very strong personality, but I see I see value in it for myself and for her as well, right? Everyone deserves to have someone in their life who is willing to be be level 4 with them and help them and care for them and be understanding and not take it personally because it has nothing to do with me. It really doesn't, even though it might come across that way, or I might have triggered something, because I know I'm no angel either, because she also has taught me to speak up more in our rebuttals, right? Our disagreements. She sees the world or the certain people or certain situations one way, and I challenge her.
Yeah. And so how does she receive those challenges?
Level 2, like, gets angry most of the time, and it becomes like, this is where my heart starts beating a lot, because I don't like confrontation. I don't like anger. I don't like fighting. There's better ways to solve problems if you feel like you need to solve, but not every conversation needs to turn into an argument or into a heated argument. And it makes my blood boil, and I don't like that. So she brings me to level 2, and I do thank her for it, because I don't go there very often. I don't get angry very often. But if I want to be that person that fights for certain equalities, I need to have that fire in me as well. And that practice with fighting and arguing, so to speak.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would love to hear more about this, about that level 2, because going into this, what I'm afraid of and what I'm so nervous about is that when in the past, so again, like I'm basing this through the lens of my past with narcissists. In the past, when I've advocated for myself, no matter how gently, when it's been as simple as, this doesn't work for me because I feel invisible or whatever it might be, making it all about me, the retaliation and vitriol and aggressive opposition and defensiveness to whatever I'm saying, I feel the same way. Like the adrenaline, my heart would start racing. But the adrenaline for me would minimize me into level 1, almost to the point of paralysis. Like I would freeze and be in shock that the person that I'm speaking with couldn't hear some constructive feedback that would improve our relationship.
Yeah.
And so hearing you say that you experienced level 2 with this person gives me a lot of hope. And because it sounds like you're able to transmute that level 2 into feeling empowered and standing up for yourself, which is what,
Yeah.
As a coach for empaths, that's something that, like, if I can't even do that, how can I expect my clients to? So I would love to hear more about your process in standing up for yourself in the face of that kind of that defensive opposition.
I typically used to go to level 1 and completely shut down and basically black out. That's the best way how I explain, because there's absolutely no thoughts. There's nothing in my mind. It's all blank. It's paralyzed, and it just, my body is reacting to everything in a numb way. But what I realized is that I don't want to be playing the winning and losing game, but that is like, that's what people do, right? Level 2 wants to win. And in certain cases, I cannot allow her to win because I disagree, and I do not make it personal, because when everything that they say, it feels personal, even if it's not about us. And when it's personal, this is where I go to level 1 and I shut down. And sometimes it's hard to even have a conversation with her, and when I am on level 1. So I find a way to climb out and not make it about me. And it's almost like there's a person right here, and it's my job to fight for that person, because this person is level 1 and they have no voice. So this is like kind of like taking myself out of the body, and I'm there, I'm level 1, and I can't, right? Because they're like, oh my God, they're attacking me. They don't love me. They hate me. I'm the worst person in the world. I can't do anything right. And it's really like hardcore level 1, where it's just victim and in pain and suffering. And someone needs to fight for that person because they are physically unable to. So this is where I find a voice within myself to be that person for them. And I bring myself to level 2 with level 3 in there. So kind of like rationalizing and helping her to understand my point of view of how this person feels. Right? And sometimes this is where even in conversation, I will refer to myself as a third individual. No, I'm not crazy. Yes, I am.
That works.
Right? And my goal is not really to win, but to be heard. Whether she actually hears it or not, her subconscious hears it, and eventually it will make sense. It's just planting seeds, right? Not every seed is going to grow. But my goal is to plant seeds. That's my rationalization through the whole thing. And sometimes because when she's in level 2, depending on what strength of the level 2 of her, I would go to maybe level 4 and help her to understand and try to play with that level with her and bring out sympathy from her, right? And if that doesn't work, level 3, or if that doesn't work, then let's battle it out, because this is what you're technically used to, and really helping her to move up or down the level. Because for level 2, sometimes going down is a lot more beneficial than level 3, because they simply cannot see the rationalization with what's going on in their mind, because to them, it also feels personal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Something so interesting that you said about like how it's important for you to, I think you said, be understood or be heard.
Be heard. Yeah, understood is not necessarily the goal, because we can we can't always make the person understand because their thought process is entirely different, but be heard.
Be heard, right?
That sometimes if they're trying to speak over, which used to be really difficult, I don't know, I would shut down, be like, no. I'm speaking. I heard you. Now you hear me. It's my turn to speak, right? So, and that right there is extremely empowering as well because I've never been able to do that, even as a child. You can never win an argument with an adult.
Yeah. Even though adults are using catabolic tactics.
Yes.
That's what they've all used on us. Like, well, because I said so. It's like, okay, then I guess that's that.
Yeah. Because you're the law.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting, like something that I noticed just in empaths and energy vampire relationships. And this was made really clear to me when I was living with my ex and we get into these cyclical fights, these same patterns over and over. And one day I was just like, what is it you want? Like, what do you want to get out of this fighting? And he was like, for you to just tell me that I'm right. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, you're right. You're right about everything. And that didn't seem to help. he just went off on a whole other thing. But then when it was my turn to say what's important to me, I said to feel understood. Like it's a reasonable expectation to have a partner listen to me and at least try to understand. But from the frame of I'm right, you're wrong, there's no room for compassionate listening and understanding. And I also got to the point with narcissism where I realized, like I know I mentioned to you on the WhatsApp, the voice memo about when it just clicked with me when I was watching the Understanding Narcissism Summit and they deliver the information as like it just doesn't take root. So like all that love we give, all that understanding we give, it doesn't take root because if it never, like as you mentioned, this person who was raised by a narcissist, if that seed of love and understanding was never planted from the beginning, it's really hard to open up and hold space for people we care about because we never learned that we have that space in our hearts. I have seen it. There are cases where it's resulted in the opposite, having a narcissistic parent like that, abusive parent, and has resulted in the child being overly empathic and overly accommodating, constantly trying to win that parent's approval. So it could really go either way. And in both cases, there's a real lack of self-worth that we're trying to get from either, in the case of a narcissist, stealing everyone else's energy, or in the case of the empath with a narcissistic parent, trying to give and give and give and give, and feel needed, and to the point of burnout.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting how the conversation can't really go anywhere if someone just wants to be right. Like there's just nowhere to go from there.
Yeah. And sometimes that's where it does end up. It's like, okay, well, clearly we have two different opinions.
Yep.
And let's just keep it there, right? You said what you wanted to say. I said what I wanted to say. Our friendship is not based on what you said, what I said, right? And we're not like, friendship is also not based on both of us agreeing on everything, right? Because then that also is boring. Then becomes not fun, not challenging, right? But then again, because she is not a full-on narcissist. She is an empath with a lot of narcissistic qualities because she was raised by one constantly. It was just her and her mom. Okay, so dad wasn't really there, and she wanted to be this fancy lady who would have everyone care for her, right? And poor me at the same time. But we all know when enough is enough, and saying yes to ourselves and saying no to that other individual is sometimes one of the best things that we can also do for both,
Yeah.
right?
One of the hardest, but the best.
Yeah, because it's such a drain on the energy that if we don't let go of it, it will continue to drain us. And not just physically, but we need to detach ourselves on I call it the spiritual level, where like the best way to describe it is like when you kind of go into meditation and visualize the umbilical cords that are attached to you. And I've done that work before, and I do it once in a while, and it's again, it comes down to really intuition. And when you're in there, you just sense where these cords are. For me, they're mainly always on my back, my upper back, and sometimes my back will feel sore, or shoulders, right? And just visualizing any kind of a device that you want to chop them off, to disconnect that umbilical cord, because they don't need your energy, but they continue to suck you dry, the vampire, right? Even though you're not physically together. I sometimes like a machete or scissors or like a saw, depending on how slowly I want it to go.
I was like picturing a selenite one.
Butter knife,
machete. Yeah.
Really just kind of like going like that, right?
Yeah. Those kinds of exercises are so helpful. I'm so glad you brought them up. They really, like what we create for ourselves in meditation and in those spaces, like that's real. Like it's real in some dimension. It might not be the physical dimension, and the person that we're cutting those cords with, you can't see that we're cutting those cords, and it's really not necessary or appropriate to tell them, oh, by the way, I cut our energetic cord.
Don't do that.
No, that doesn't work. Something that I found has been helpful is I'll imagine their cord, like you can't plug it into me anymore, but you can plug it into go plug it into Mother Earth or something. Go plug it in somewhere, and I'll imagine them plugging in the cord to some other renewable resource that's not a human, and that help. And I'll send love, and that always helps, because I think it gets so like our heart cords attached so hard to these journeys, because it's hard for us empaths to believe that narcissism can even exist to that degree, where like there are narcissists who just don't care. They just don't care about people. They feel really sorry for themselves when they're not getting the energy that they want, but people to them are just energetic supply and disposable. And it's so hard to believe. So when we're caught up in those relationships, it's so gut-wrenching, because we care so much. We've already invested time, and we wouldn't have invested that time if we didn't believe in them. So getting to the point where we've had enough and have to cut those cords is also this battle within of, like, I know some of the things that kept me in those patterns with my ex, what were thoughts like, well, I've already invested all this time in him. Like, what if that means that all this time I invested means nothing? And I had to get over that and realize it was never about him. It was always about my own personal growth. And that the time that I think I invested in him, it wasn't in him, because it never took root. So I wasn't investing time, I was spending time. And there's a huge difference. And when we're working through our cord attachments with narcissists and energy vampires, we gotta really think, am I investing my time? Is anything growing? Or am I just spending my time frivolously? It's no different. It's energy. Time and money are both energies. So I found that to be very helpful, to ask myself those questions and answer honestly, because I could also trick myself. Like, no, I see growth. Because when narcissists are in relationships with empaths, they know that all we're looking for is growth. Yeah. They know that's like, they detect like, okay, she stays attached to my journey. if I'm like, oh, I get it now, I understand now, I'll change. And then the empath ego is like, oh, amazing, I'm healing them. And so then we attach, and but really it's just spending, it's like spending money recklessly. And that's really something we gotta
Yeah. It,
gotta be aware of.
it's an investment. It sounds like you made an investment in your ex. And I'm curious, do you believe that investment was worth it?
For me, yes, because I needed to repeat those patterns over and over and over to get to like 4-year-old me. And I'm like, okay, what's going on with my 4-year-old self and my 7-year-old self? And that those patterns brought up all of the family patterns, ancestral patterns that told me that I deserved to be in that kind of relationship. And I would not have figured out that I base my self-worth on how much energy I could give and how much abuse I could take and still show up being like, I love you, I accept you, unconditional love, unconditional love. So it was totally worth it to get to the point of realizing that unconditional love does not mean taking as much abuse as I can get and still showing up. It means being honest with myself and detaching, because I had to learn that I was just an enabler, and I was trying to control the way he was getting his energy by thinking like, oh, I have all these coaching tools, so if I just keep him on this path, like then he'll get there, he'll expand into levels 4 through 7. And that was really just my trying to control his journey out of fear of the campaign he was launching against me and the things that was being said about me between him and his friends. And I thought, well, if I could just prove that this work is worth it, that the work I'm doing with him is worth it, then all these things that everybody's saying about me will be proven wrong. So there's a lot of ego attachment, and I needed to go through it to figure out really where this lack of self-worth and this feeling of indebtedness was coming from. But as far as he goes, once I was out of the picture, he just kept repeating the same patterns with new people.
Yeah. These kids are fighting over ice cream, and I had to mute myself. I don't think these kids are aware that I'm actually recording, and everybody's going to hear you guys fighting and bickering over ice cream.
You're an asshole.
I think that
2 times.
And Ethan, you and I are going to have a serious conversation after this. I'm going to be taking technology away from them.
No.
Okay, we have like a couple of minutes left, and I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that, and most importantly, sharing the part of what you've learned and what value you gained from that experience, however difficult it was, that you see value in that and that you don't see it as a waste of time, and that you took so much away from it that benefits you to this day right now.
Oh my, it so does, yeah. And that I hope that gives others who are watching hope that the light at the end of the tunnel is pretty much the equal and opposite to that life of darkness.
Yeah. Like, would you have found your voice any other way? I mean, you could have, but
I mean, it was meant to be this way. And I found now I'm in a relationship with someone who is so just like me in terms of like giving and giving and giving and supporting and supporting and supporting. And every day I'm like, wait a second, I do deserve this. Like receive. I have to remind myself to receive, because I'm so wired to be like, what? Like I'm supposed to be the one giving all the energy. Like what are you? Like what do I have to offer? Someone else is being this kind and generous and gentle.
yeah.
But now I know, like thanks to that experience, that opposite experience, I'm like, wow, this is gold. Like this is so valuable, and it's all I've ever needed.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would have known that otherwise.
And yeah, it almost sounds like you might have not even seen the value in the relationship that you have now if you did not go through that experience.
Oh, I would have taken this for granted. I definitely would have taken it for granted.
I love that. That's so level 5 of you.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing out level 5. I've been trying to be more in level 5 lately. Level 6 and 7, I don't get much done, to be honest.
I know.
Like,
Neither do I. Well, level 6, I can get things done, but level 7, it's like, oh man, like none of this really exists.
none of it matters.
Like, why even put pen to paper? Because none of it really matters. It matters to others, but really, it does not exist unless I make and unless I create and then exist, and then even then, it still does not exist.
Right. That's why we need that level 5. You are my reflection of level 5 energy. Like when I need to get into level 5 to be to produce, like produce content, produce something, produce a workshop, I think of you. You're my inspiration.
Yeah.
Like ever since you're like, that's my favorite level, I was like, yeah.
It is.
That's a great level.
And my favorite number too.
That's right. There's something to that.
Yeah. Awesome. I know it's 12 o'clock. I will actually join you this time just so I can support you.
Oh my God, I love you so much. Thank you. That's amazing.
Oh, you're welcome. Just send me the number to join.
Okay.
And see you in a couple of minutes.
Amazing. Okay. See you over there.
Thank you, everyone. Until next time. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Mom.